Hey, Chris Willaert. Obviously, Chris Willaert, Farmers Insurance Agency here in Mankato. Um, Many of you have seen various posts and things like that we've put out there regarding life insurance and stuff like that. And some of you know my story. Um, Whether you watch this today from beginning to end, I have no idea how long it's going to get. We're recording it in one shot. But I'm going to tell my story, and it's why I firmly believe in life insurance. And it was 4 years ago today, May 7th, 2015. I woke up that morning. I went for a run. Generally speaking, I was as healthy as I could be. About 8 months prior, I had applied for and gotten another life insurance policy. And it turned out that that was the last life insurance policy that I may ever get. Everybody assumes that everything's going to be great and always going to be great, but we don't ever know what's going to happen. So, as I said, I woke up that morning, went for a run. I felt good. Went to work, got to the office, day went on, had lunch with a buddy of mine. Everything was great. And at about 3 o'clock that afternoon, I was standing in my office and talking to a couple of coworkers and actually just telling them a story and stuff, and was holding a bottle of water just like this, which I'm not really sure why I decided to grab a bottle of water for this, but was standing there telling them a story about something, and all of a sudden I had a flash of pain through my chest. And I can best describe it as I've never been shot, but honestly it felt like I'd been shot, and it was right through the middle of my chest. Kind of knocked me backwards. And the couple of coworkers that I was talking to, because obviously it interrupted my story, and I took a drink of my water, and they're like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And it was one of those where I was like, man, something's not right here. And anyway, so I keep telling my story, and a couple minutes later, I'm like, all right, I gotta go sit down. I was feeling a little lightheaded. And then again, they were asking me, "Are you okay?" And one of them started asking all the questions related to a heart attack. And I'm like, "I'm not having a heart attack." I'm 40, at the time, 42 years old. I'm healthy. I mean, like I said, I'd been running a lot and feeling great. Anyway, so I went to my office and I sat down. And a couple minutes later, I was feeling even more lightheaded. And the pain was gone, but just something felt off. And so I kind of yelled out to a couple of them. I'm like, "Nobody be alarmed. I'm going to lay down on the floor for a minute." And I had a baseball beanbag chair in my office. Obviously, I'm a sports nut, so it was only fitting that I would have a baseball beanbag chair in my office, right? Well, so I laid down, and I was laying there, and a couple minutes go by, and all of a sudden I looked down, and I realized that I was sweating through my pants, and to the point it looked like I had wet myself. And that was the point where I was really like, yeah, there's definitely something wrong here. So I did what any sensible 42-year-old guy would do and said, I'm going to go home and take a nap. And again, coworkers are asking me, "Are you sure you're okay? Do you want us to call you an ambulance?" I'm like, "No, I don't need an ambulance. I'm fine." And so, like I said, I decided I was going to go home and take a nap. And at the time, my office was basically, I don't know, probably 8 blocks away from the hospital itself and about 10 blocks from home. So I started driving home and had sent a text to my then girlfriend and just said, "Something's not right. I feel off." And of course she said, "Well, get your butt to the hospital." And I sort of listened, but sort of didn't, because, again, I was 42 years old, I was healthy, I was invincible, right? Anyway, so as I was driving, I got to a spot where basically I live about 2 blocks from the local hospital here, and got to a spot where it was either turn left into the emergency room parking lot or turn right and go 2 blocks home. There was nobody behind me. I came to a complete stop, and I sat there. It seemed like it was 30 seconds. It might have only been 3, and it might have been 2 minutes. I really don't know how long it was, but I sat there and was like, well, do I go in here or do I go home and take a nap? Because I was starting to feel a little bit better, Anyway, so I made the decision to turn into the parking lot, parked my truck, sat in the truck for, again, it was probably a couple of minutes where I was like, maybe I can just go home. For whatever reason, made the decision to walk into the emergency room. Walked in, told them, 42-year-old male, chest pain, or had been chest pain, but I was feeling okay right now. And so they bring me back and start running tests. In the meantime, as they're running tests and things like that, they were ruling things out. And the first thing that they ruled out was a heart attack. So obviously I was very relieved. Who wouldn't be relieved to be told that it wasn't a heart attack? At that point, my girlfriend had gotten there. And right after they ruled out the heart attack, she stepped out into the hallway and was on the phone with my parents telling them, he's in the hospital, but it's not a heart attack, so obviously everybody's relieved. And at that point, Dr. Bossy, emergency room doctor here in Mankato, is sitting there and he's running through some things with me. And it's one of those scenes where everybody's seen the old Charlie Brown, Snoopy cartoons and stuff like that. And when the teacher talks, what you'd always hear is wah, 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 wah. And that's pretty much what I was hearing from him as he was talking about things. But all of a sudden, one word popped out. And I looked at him and I said, "Did you just say I have an aneurysm?" And his response was yes. And I looked right at him, and Dr. Bossy will verify this, but I basically said, "Stop talking, get her in here." And so he kind of looked at me like, okay. He brings my girlfriend back in. I looked at her and I said, "I have an aneurysm." And I looked at him and I go, "Now what?" And he said, "Well, Mayo 1 is on its way." For those of you not familiar with Mayo 1, that is their helicopter. So I was about to take my first ever helicopter ride in my life, and obviously under circumstances that I wasn't thrilled about. A little bit later, obviously, I get strapped into the helicopter and they fly me to Rochester. Before they had sent me on my way there, I guess, I had asked Dr. Bossy a couple of different questions, and one of the things I said to him was, well, is this one of those things where they're going to crack my chest open and pull my heart out and all this kind of stuff, or are they going to just, shove some tube up my arm or up through my leg or something like that? And Dr. Bossy's response was, "Well, I'm not a cardiothoracic surgeon, so I really can't answer that. I do know Dr. Bossy on a personal level, and to this day I kind of tease him for the fact that there's no doubt in my mind you were lying to me, Dr. Bossy. You knew what they were going to be doing, most likely." Anyway, so I get to Rochester. They get me all stabilized and everything. And at that point, obviously, my parents and stuff like that show up. They get me stabilized, and at the point where I'm finally over there and stabilized, the first surgeon that comes in was Dr. Joyce, and he appeared to be somewhere around my age, maybe a couple of years older. And so he comes in and he's talking to me about a few things. He leaves. About 10 minutes later, another doctor comes in. His name's Dr. Joyce. I'm looking at him and I'm like, "You're not the same Dr. Joyce." And he tells me, "No, that's my son." I was like, "Oh, wow." So I have two Dr. Joyces that were going to be operating on me. And the older Dr. Joyce, Dr. Lyle Joyce, kind of ran through what they were going to be doing. He explained to me that, with where we are, time of day and things like that, he said, he goes, "We're actually, now that you're stabilized, we're going to wait and do the surgery tomorrow morning for this." And I was like, well, why? And basically his response was, "My A team has gone home for the night and you want my A team for this." And throughout various steps of this, I found out that, wow, this is even more serious than I thought. And I was trying to keep a light mood and everything. And it's one of those where I'm thinking, just fix me and let me go home. But in any case, so he was running through some different things, and he was like, "Well, do you have any questions for me?" My mom and dad and others were just, hammering him with questions. And I was sitting there, and I don't even remember what was on the TV, but I was just kind of zoned out. And He's like, okay, well, no questions, all right. And anyway, so at that point, somewhere during that, I had posted on Facebook that I was going to have to be taking a couple of days off work due to an ascending aortic aneurysm, and my phone absolutely blew up. I had texts and phone calls and Facebook posts and all sorts of stuff. Needless to say, I didn't sleep that night. And I still to this day occasionally go back and will read some of those Facebook posts and comments and things like that. But basically what it was is everybody has, you know, a bicuspid and a tricuspid valve on their heart. And there was no way of ever really knowing this previously without, you know, numerous testing being done. But I have two bicuspid valves, and that created pressure, et cetera, that led to this aortic aneurysm. Since then, my kids have had to get checked. My siblings have had to get checked. Everybody's, you know, cleared, luckily. So I was one of the lucky 1 out of 100 that have that specific issue. From there, 1 out of 100 ever actually have an issue with that. So 1 out of 100 have two bicuspids. 1 out of 100 of those actually ever have any kind of issue. And from there, only 1 out of 100 actually survive this. In most cases, an ascending aortic aneurysm like that, in many cases, once it hits, the person has passed away before they even hit the ground. So obviously I had a few things going for me. One of the questions I did ask the surgeon is, what was the pain that I felt when I felt this flash of pain in my chest? And he couldn't answer it. He said, I have no idea why you felt that like that. He said, that's not something we normally see. One of the other things that happened that night that led to me realizing how serious this was I kind of made a comment about, wow, you know, I got two Dr. Joyces. And one of the nurses said to me, yeah, that doesn't happen very often. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? I mean, they're doctors at the same place. And he said, well, normally they both do their own things. And only occasionally does son assist father on these. And he goes, it means that he's planning on learning something from this. So obviously, you know, even though I was trying to keep a light mood and everything, I was realizing how serious this was. So as I said, didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, they were getting ready to wheel me back for my surgery. And again, you know, do you have any questions? You know, and everybody else had lots of questions and I didn't. And finally, you know, Dr. Joyce looks at me and said, are you sure you don't have any questions? And I said, I got one. I said, how long until I'm throwing a baseball again? And in the room, if you could have heard people, you'd be laughing, because one person wanted to punch me, another one was laughing, and another one couldn't believe that I had said it. But quite frankly, to me, that was going to be the indicator of when is life going to be back to normal. And what I was told is that, you know, well, maybe by the end of August or early September. As I said, this was early May when this happened, because it was May 7th, 2015. You know, August or September just seemed like a long ways away. I've got two kids, they play a lot of baseball, and the idea of going a whole summer of not playing catch with my kids obviously was not something that sat well with me. But he also made the comment of, basically, let's get through this. So as they were wheeling me back, again, I was trying to keep things a little bit light. Those of you that know me know that I've got a sense of humor. I remember one of the last things, it wasn't the last thing, but one of the last things that I had said to my parents is I stopped and I looked at my dad and I go, hey, by the way, all my life insurance policy premiums are paid up right now, so we're good. And you could tell he wanted to laugh, and I was wanting to laugh, but obviously I was looking at them thinking, man, this might be the last time that I ever see my family again. And that the phone call the night before to my kids might have been the last time that I ever talked to them. Anyway, get wheeled back. Of course, they do the whole, you know, countdown from 20 or 30 or whatever the number is, and I don't think I got more than 1 or 2 numbers into it. And I must have been out. There was 5 hours of surgery, 5 to 6 hours of surgery. And then when I was in the recovery area, they had to take me back for another 2 to 3 hours worth of surgery because the bleeding wouldn't stop and there were complications. In any case, as I said, so it was a Friday morning that the surgery started, and the next thing, other than after counting down backwards, the next thing that I knew was I opened my eyes and I said, "What time is it?" And I heard a nurse say 5, and I said, "AM or PM?" "AM." I said, "Saturday or Sunday?" "Saturday." And I literally just went, "Perfect." So that, and I remember that very, very vividly. Obviously, from there was a lot of different things over the next few days. And it was a major crack my chest open, pull my heart out, fix it kind of a thing. That obviously a pretty complicated thing. I'm very grateful to be here today. Over those next couple of days in the hospital, I had various people visiting and things like that. One of the stories that most people do find relatively entertaining is that after, I think it was about 24 hours after I woke up, I was told, "You're going to start walking." And I looked at the nurse and I just said, "No, I'm not." And she goes, "Yeah, you are." And I said, "No, I'm not." I'm laying there with, I don't know, stitches and staples and everything else. And I don't know how many tubes running through my arms. I had multiple in each arms. I had them coming out my stomach. I had them coming out my neck. And I was like, "No, I'm really not." And so the nurse and I argued for a couple of minutes about it. And finally I just said, "Tell you what." And this was 5-year-old me pulling this, but I said, "You give me a popsicle, and after I'm done with that popsicle, I'll walk." And she got sidetracked, and I didn't get that popsicle for about 3 to 4 hours. So I did buy myself a little time. And it was one of those where I was like, man, those first couple of steps, it was like learning to walk all over again, feeling like your chest is going to fall out. And basically I got just outside my door and I saw a little kid, about 3 years old maybe, and he had the same kind of walker I did. Obviously it was a lot smaller. And I kind of looked at him and he had all the same tubes that I did. And he was walking. And I looked at the nurse and I said, "What did he have?" And she goes, "Well, that was actually his third. And he's been through this a couple of times." And at that moment I was like, all right, if that little guy can do the walking, I think I can do it as well. And anyway, obviously there was a lot of recovery and things like that. It took weeks. Going through cardiac rehab and all sorts of stuff like that. Had to take significant time off of work. Obviously significant time off work. There was at least a week where I was in the hospital, and then there was a week of sitting at home where I couldn't move and all that kind of stuff. But eventually started to get myself back to being able to walk places on my own. Wasn't able to drive by myself for at least 30 days. That seemed like some of the longest 30 days of my life. And I kept in the back of my head, I always had that, August or September throwing a baseball thing in my head. It was actually probably mid to late June where I started to just kind of feel those motions and things like that. And I believe it was July 1st of that year. Showed up at one of my kids' baseball games. He was playing coach pitch that year. And I was supposed to have been the head coach and still kind of was, but kind of wasn't, obviously, for obvious reasons. And I showed up and I looked at the other two coaches and I said, "I'm pitching tonight." And everybody looked at me like I was crazy. But obviously that was a big milestone for me, is that I got back faster. Why am I telling this story? Well, like I said, I've had a lot of people ask it, and so that's part of the reason. But it really does explain why I believe in life insurance. As I said, the policy that I took out 8 months earlier, that's the last policy. I'm not eligible yet. It's 4 years later. If I'm lucky, I might be eligible for more life insurance somewhere in the next 4 to 6 years. So everybody thinks nothing's going to happen to them. And I thought nothing was ever going to happen to me. Don't be that person. don't find yourself sitting there in that position of wishing you did have life insurance, and getting to a point where you know, wait so long that you can't get it anymore. Do it when you're younger. Do it when you're healthy. Do it now. Nobody knows when we're going to die. Nobody knows when we're going to have that tragic event or that event that changes everything. So don't wait. If you got any questions, give us a call. I'm not looking to sell life insurance. I don't sell life insurance. I explain the need for it. I explain how it works. I tell my story, because I am proof as to why the time is now to go get something. Like I said, woke up that morning perfectly healthy. Everything was great. There was nothing wrong with me. I'd had a physical 8 months earlier. Everything was great. Don't wait. Give us a call, 507-345-8888. Chris Willaert Agency, Farmers Insurance. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.